Hi, I'm Jess Wass, CEO and founder of Rework It.
I'm Teresa Sweeney, a senior executive in finance and author, and this is Rewritten. Real talk for working moms who want it all.
This is a podcast hosted by two successful working moms and friends who define success on their own terms and in very different ways.
But if there's one thing we both agree on, it's this. You can't have it all, but you can have everything you want. The rules just have to be rewritten.
Hi, and welcome back to Rewritten with your co-hosts, Jess Wass and Teresa Sweeney. And today we are going to continue our conversation. We're going to talk about energy. And not in like the woo-woo way. Maybe we'll get to that. But really just in terms of there's a lot that we need to do as working parents, especially as working moms, from the mental load to all of the actual to-dos that need to get done at work and at home. So how do we fuel all that? What does that look like? How do you actually build and sustain yourself so that we actually have the energy to show up as the best version of ourselves? And so that's what we're going to talk about today, try and get specific around it, in addition to talking about the ideals and the dreams. But what are each of us doing that allows us to show up as our best, I'd say most days, because we're not perfect. So Teresa, I know this is a topic we were both super excited about. What is it about this topic that really excited you?
Yeah, great question. I do. I love this topic. And the reason why is because I went on a very significant personal journey in and around energy and wellness. And that started back all the way back to childhood for me. So when I was a kid, I ate like a very standard American diet growing up in the 90s of like fruity pebbles or cocoa puffs for breakfast. Sometimes it was a
Delicious.
gigantic cinnamon roll from this bakery nearby. Yum. And like, I don't know, we go out to dinner at Red Lobster or Olive Garden, just like massive plates of like Alfredo pasta or like those strawberry daiquiri whale bones at Red Lobster. I
The
mean,
things that we would eat.
the things that we would eat, just like insane amount of processed foods, carbs, sugar. And what happened to me was I gained a lot of weight when I stopped playing sports, especially in sort of high school going into college.
Yes.
And I had this like horrible experience coming home for Thanksgiving at some point when I was in, I think, my sophomore year of college. And my dad looks at me and he's like, "You're heavy, girl." I was like,
No.
it was horrible. When I tell you, it was so awful.
I knew you at this time. But I would never, ever, at any moment have I known you since before freshman year of college, have you ever been heavy,
Mean,
right?
I was probably,
You might be heavier than you were today, but I would never refer to you as heavy.
at some point I got to like 180, 185 pounds, which like
But you're tall,
5'7". I was definitely in
taller
the
than me.
realm of like, I was over. I was definitely
Listen, we have the freshman 15. It's part of that journey of, and like you said, I too was an athlete. Yeah, I was a runner in high school. I was running miles because I was a long distance runner. And then I didn't play any sports in college. And so, and I'll talk about my own health journeys as well. But yeah, there was a lot of fluctuation and growing into your body. But yeah,
totally.
I'm sure I felt like a cool slap across the face when your dad
That was
said that. So,
awful.
so what happened from there?
Yeah, well, and by the way, it's like I felt like I was doing everything, right? Like the Slim Fast bars and like buns of steel, like
The
nothing.
diet culture was terrible. Oh, do you remember when they made all the snack portion versions? Like you can
Yes,
still have an Oreo, but it's a snack
a
portion of the
snack
Oreo, and there's no
portion.
cream inside. It's just the
The
outside. It's just a
bad
flattened,
powder cookie.
thin, chalky cardboard Oreo thin. Those were a bad idea.
Terrible, terrible, terrible ideas. Yeah, and obviously none of it worked, and it was like a lot of, it created a ton of issues for me, and it was one of those where like I almost didn't even know how bad I felt because it had just become normal. And what happened for me was, and the catalyst that changed everything was I stumbled on this book, and especially this book, The China Study by Colin Campbell, totally changed how I thought about food. And this book really talked about all the proponents of a whole food, plant forward diet and how much research there was really supporting how all of this leads to better health outcomes on basically every disease you could possibly name. And I read this book just like totally horrified, jaw on the floor. And it really started for me this whole journey that became, I mean, really, it's been my life ever since of how I can really continue to optimize how I fuel and energize my body in a way that makes me feel good.
So, what was it about reading the book, 'cause being in diet culture, I'm sure people were talking to us about eating healthier and healthier diets. So what was it about this book that all of a sudden, like, a switch flipped and that you really latched onto it?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I mean, honestly, there was something about it that hit really hard for me, and I think ultimately what resonated most, and I read so many other books like in and around this space at the same time, but what really resonated, and I think what I was really craving was this idea that it took you out of diet culture. It was exactly an escape from how awful I felt trying to follow like all these ways of very restrictive eating for elongated periods of time. And instead, the message was just like, if you eat like this, you eat like this every day. Your body will learn to tune in to your natural signals of satiety. And actually, when you feel hungry, when you feel full, there's no restriction. You can eat this, you can eat as much as you want and you feel like you need of these foods. And part of the messaging around it is like there are some interesting research studies also where you tell people they can eat as much as they want of baked potatoes versus Lay's potato chips. And I will give you one guess as to which one people eat more of. And the answer is obviously like you eat so many more processed foods. Like they're designed to be hyper palatable. And again, like the crux of this messaging was like if you learn to reset to really what's natural, what comes from the earth, it is both extremely more efficient fuel for your body that dramatically improves your overall health and you just don't have to worry about it. And again, that was so appealing for me.
So it sounds like it not only changed just your physical health, but it sounds like there was a mental health component of it where it sort of took the mental load off of
Yeah.
constantly calculating in your head, like how many points or calories of this, or should I eat? It sounds like it made it easier for you to make decisions. Is that true?
Yeah, it's such a good it's very well stated because even now, I mean, it's actually one of the things that gets me about like how often the headlines tend to be extremely inflammatory and clickbaity about like, today it's protein, but before that it was whatever fat and
We
keto
just keep going
diet.
back and forth, to be honest, like every 10 years.
My god. Yeah, and at the end of the day, I think it's very funny because now especially, like, now I've gotten into a very good rhythm. I do think it's important to say for any of this, like, and we could talk in more detail about it too, but as I learned this new way of eating, like, I continue to make shifts around what makes me feel good and what doesn't, and there's something that's so much more powerful about just, like, tuning in to how you feel and how your body responds to different types of food, especially, like, after exercise, during different parts in your cycle, different stuff that's going on stress wise. Like I've sort of learned to like how to adapt it more to those kind of waves and cycles.
Sounds like you're learning to listen to your body.
Yeah, and it feels so much better. It just is massively differentiating in terms of just like how I feel and the consistency of energy day to day. And now, and it's again, when I was not eating this way, I had no idea how bad I felt. And now it's so interesting because, like, anytime I don't eat like this, like, you feel such a big difference. It's really noticeable how it impacts energy. And I think it's something that's really empowering to get in touch with because it really helps me personally show up better in everything else.
Well, can you talk a little bit about, some people are very into somatic, which is like paying attention to where in your body you feel certain things and really that connection to it. So, what does it feel like when you're firing on all cylinders? So, if someone's listening to this, they're like, "Oh, yeah, I want that." And what does it feel like when you know you've done not done it wrong, but when you haven't fueled yourself properly? Like, what are those symptoms that your body is sending you, or the signals that your body is sending you that you know that something's off?
Yeah, good question. Well, and I'll start with like when it feels right. And like and when it feels right, you feel light. Like it's almost like this sense of just like inner hum of like the engine purring of like you feel good, you feel excited, you feel energized and like kind of ready for action, if you will. It's like there's almost this priming nature about it. Whereas when it's not that, it's almost like this sort of lethargicness. It's like those moments where like everything feels hard. everything feels exhausting. You just almost like don't have the same zeal. And by the way, I think like food is one piece of the equation. The other things that have been so important that we can unpack more too are definitely around exercise or movement. And actually, I think movement's almost the better word because the point is to find ways to literally move your body that feel like play and feel enjoyable. But that's one. Sleep is a huge one. And then obviously, I think how you talk to yourself, like your own sort of narrative mindset and level of in touchness. But that to me are those are the four pillars that really support the overall sense of energy where you feel like everything's coming together nicely.
Yeah, and we can maybe touch on each of those as we go through our episode today. I want to latch onto your conversation about food. So one thing I think just to name, I don't know if you've said it out right, but you are a vegetarian,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I actually love talking about this for a second too, because so many people like just to be very clear, I can literally eat cake pops and like French fries all day and call myself a vegetarian. And
yes.
I can
And I
eat
know some vegetarians who do that.
who literally do that, and I can eat,
Yes.
like, cake pops, french fries, and fish
Pizza.
sticks and call myself a pescatarian. None of these are healthy, obviously, and so when I say vegetarian, I often more say when I talk about how I eat, that it's whole food and plant forward. Like, everything is basically oriented around predominantly whole grains, legumes, vegetables, fruits, like, stuff that's really as close to how it comes out of the earth as possible, and if it's not that, it's done very intentionally, something I pick for whatever, a little treat or other reason, but that tends to be the vast majority of my diet.
And I do think that's a good distinction because there are folks who are vegetarians who are not eating healthy. So vegetarian does not equal healthy. But I
No.
also just wanted to call out that you are a vegetarian. So you're not eating meat as well. And so it's a different lifestyle. And so it's a nice comparison to where I am. And I've always admired this about you. One of the things that we were talking about before we started recording was this question of like, what was the moment you realized how important taking care of yourself is? Teresa knows this about me, but I had the opposite sort of food journey in some sense, and I'm still struggling through it today. So, for the entire time that Teresa's probably met me, and what all of my friends, close friends, know about me is that I have had a very restrictive diet through most of my adulthood because I have a digestive disorder. And I'm actually going to amend this and say I had a digestive disorder. So, literally, my entire adult life. So, when I was a child, I was a picky eater. So, I've never had a good relationship with food. I was a very picky eater. There were like, I could probably name on one hand the things that I ate growing up. There wasn't a lot of variety, and none of it was very healthy. I'm probably the only person you'll ever meet who ate a cream cheese sandwich on white bread with the crust cut off for every day for a decade. Okay.
I
Just like
definitely know
really
for all the parties that you came to.
correct. So you know the history of this. So I was always a picky eater, but I was trying to get more healthy in college, but I constantly felt sick. So when I say sick, and I think this is a really important, especially for women, this idea of listening to your body. My body I was constantly nauseous. I constantly felt just like my body wasn't stable at all. I was always having some sort of digestive issue or problem, resulting in going to the bathroom, this or that. Like my stomach was not stable at all. And so I went to multiple doctors and they finally diagnosed me with just IBS. IBS is irritable bowel syndrome. So many people have it. I probably should have looked up this stat beforehand, but there's probably more people who have it who haven't been diagnosed because the way you diagnose IBS is basically checking you for all the other gastro diseases and ruling those out. At the time, there wasn't a lot of research on IBS. I happened to find one book that started to tell me about the diets and what foods I shouldn't have. So basically, in order to keep my body stable, I couldn't have anything unhealthy. So I couldn't have fried foods or really fatty foods. I couldn't have dairy, which is
Jeez.
my
Yeah.
favorite food. Okay. I told you I ate cream cheese sandwiches for a decade growing up, and I couldn't have that anymore. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to go through. It's like going through the worst breakup of your life, but every day. Okay. I couldn't have dairy and cheese and cream cheese and all that wonderful stuff. But I also couldn't have healthy food. So I couldn't eat a lot of vegetables because vegetables are very gaseous. They're very hard for your body to break down, which is why they keep you full longer because they're not quick sugar. But that hurt my body. So I'm living my entire adult life not able to eat a proper meal. I also had to be very specific about not only what I ate, but when I ate, how much I ate at every meal. Every time Teresa wanted to go out to eat, I would have to have the menu sent to me ahead of time. I would have to check that there was something on the menu I could eat, and there was usually like maybe one thing. It was a huge pain in the ass, I'm sure. Like, what was your experience of me our entire young adult lives?
No, I mean, like, obviously it was I mean, honestly, I felt horrible. Like, it sounded so miserable,
It
candidly. Like,
was.
I mean, and I remember, the times we bring lactate pills when we went to, like, a fondue restaurant one time per year. And,
And I
like,
paid for that dearly, you know?
I know. Yeah, you were always sick afterwards. So I mean, I just hugely sympathize of, like, what a horrible, hard thing to be dealing with. But I think what happened to you after is incredible. So I know you're gonna
So
share
yeah,
that.
let me talk about that. And it was really horrible. Right. It even affected my dating life. It's very hard to go on dates and like be afraid to eat. So it affected all parts of my life. At work, I had a box of lemon ginger tea I would have to drink after every meal there. I'd have like my own snacks in my drawer. I had to make sure I ate at specific times. I remember when I was flying around the world for Starwood a lot, I would pack peanut butter sandwiches with me because they would always be eating dinner at like 8 o'clock at night and I needed to eat at like 5 o'clock. And so I would literally ship peanut butter sandwiches. We were in like Monaco. We were in like European destinations. I remember I was in Istanbul once and I like opened up and I had like 7 peanut butter sandwiches packed to last me the week because I wasn't
You
sure I could
should bring
eat
the peanut
anything.
butter. It's a liquid.
Yes, it is a liquid. Exactly. It didn't get flat. Like
Which
if you
is
opened up
fine.
my suitcase, you'd be like, what is smuggling? This is ridiculous. But that's what my life had come to. And I think the worst part though is that I had accepted this is a lifelong chronic illness.
Yeah.
There is no cure. So I had to live with the fact that my life was miserable in many ways and that I just accepted it. And I think a lot of women, we have this physical ailment that doesn't have like an actual physical trauma. So it's not like I got into a car accident and my back hurts. But every woman I know, most of them, there's some physical ailment that keeps popping up consistently that they've just sort of accepted and normalized. Okay. And that's where I was. So now let's fast forward. It is 2020. The world is falling apart. Okay. Because of COVID. Literally, this is humanity is maybe about to end. We're all thinking. I couldn't get toilet paper. I couldn't get food. It was wild. But what had happened quietly before in the last couple of years is I had left my full-time jobs, my last one at my last startup, and I had started Rework It, or the beginnings of Rework It, and started working for myself. I had finished up and wrapped up my master's program, and now we're like in spring, summer of COVID. And what would always happen with me with this diet is I would start to doubt that my condition existed. So like every 6 months I'd be like, well, maybe I'm not really sick. And then I would eat something I'm not supposed to eat. And immediately like the next day I'd be like, I'm so sorry, God, please just take the pain. I promise I won't do this again. Please, God, I'm sorry. Like I would do this. I swear to God, every 6 months,
We'll
like couldn't
continue.
learn this lesson. So now we're in COVID. I'm like, well, the world's falling apart. I might as well have cheese. Like, who the hell cares if I'm in pain? We're all in pain. And so I start eating things that I'm not supposed to eat. And the craziest thing happened. Nothing happened. Okay. All of a sudden, I'm like, wait, I haven't gotten sick yet. I haven't felt sick in a couple of weeks. That's
Crazy.
not normal, right? During this time where everyone is, having an immense amount of stress. And this just kept going and going. What all of a sudden, like it had been now months, a year where I have not been sick. And that has never happened to me my entire adult life. And I realized I was cured.
Mhm.
What changed for me and what I didn't realize is that we have stress that shows up when we are living a life that's not in alignment with who we are and what it is we want and we need. And I was constantly masking in so many different ways. Masking, being a Black woman, masking being a woman in the room of all men, masking being an actual introvert and I'm pretending masquerading as an extrovert. Like just masking in all these ways, trying to show up as someone that maybe I'm not, and constantly thinking about other people and how I show up in this way. And when I stripped that all away, because I was only now reporting to myself, it completely changed my life.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I'm so connected to this idea of energy because there's a lot that we've just accepted about, well, this is just the way it is, or this is, we've normalized discomfort. And I'm here to say that if you actually shift how you live, how you think, and it is possible, you can shift your physical health. And there's literally no other explanation for what happened to me other than that.
Yeah, I think it's an incredibly powerful story, and as a friend, I'm so glad that you discovered that. And I think what you said is exactly right. I mean, whether it's back pain or hip pain or knee pain or whatever, it's like migraines. By the way, is one I hear a lot.
Yes.
There are so many ways that whether it's stressors or imbalances in our bodies and our energy can manifest. And actually, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the narrative so much from medicine is that like this is normal. You're going to have this for the rest of your life. You just need to take XYZ pill every day to manage it. And, best of luck. And partly again, like for my own journey, so much of what resonated deeply was just even this like kernel of hope that there is a better way to manage so many of these things. And I think all of the pieces are really important. And I think what's so interesting about your story, Jess, is sometimes like it can take a while to figure out exactly like what's out of balance. And
Mhm.
it might be something around stresses, or it might be something around just generally your mindset. It might be your sleep. It might be food. It might be how you're moving your body or a lack of strength. And even just going through the process of sort of figuring out and experimenting, like even just as you hear those things, like what resonates for you? What does that sort of unpack? And for me, certainly starting with food sort of opened the floodgates to all the other ones. And I kind of went through each in a little bit of a sequence, but like the work's never done. And there's something about just continuing to see these as levers that can really help improve my own energy, everyone's energy. That's really powerful.
Yeah, and they're all intertwined because when I
Big
was
time.
sick, I didn't have the energy to engage in movement or exercise. That was hard, right? When I was sick, I couldn't eat healthy. It might affect someone's sleep, right, when they're not feeling well. And so it can also be hard to figure out where to start. A couple of things happen where people, fail or fall short here, which is like one, they try and tackle everything at once, right? Because we're very much an all or
Yeah,
nothing culture.
totally. Yeah.
Right? So we try and do it all, and then of course that doesn't work because it's too much, and then we fall back into nothing. Or we try and do something and we want immediate gratification. And real change happens slowly and it happens like in little ticks. So I think that's something that's also be important. As you said, there's a couple different areas that are all interconnected. Just pick one area to start,
Totally.
and if it feels right to you, just start to peel that back a little bit. As I was thinking about having a kid, I was like, I don't want her to inherit my bad eating habits. And so I know that I need to show up as a bit more of a better role model. And so I worked with my friend Vanessa Kagan, who's a health coach, and there's something that came out of that that actually was really helpful to me. And it goes to what you talked a little bit about mindset and how we talk to ourselves. So I even said it earlier. My whole life, people have called me a picky eater. And that is my reputation in my family. And so people still tell me I'm a picky eater. Okay, well, if I'm a picky eater, then a picky eater does not try new things. A picky eater is emboldened then to be like, no, that looks weird. That smells weird. I've never had that before. I don't want it. And so that label prevented me from even being open to shifting because it's an identity.
Becomes its own self-fulfilling label, right? It's like you attach to it and say, "This is who I am," and that's it, and it's hard to move off of.
Yeah. And so the labels that we give ourselves can be really powerful in keeping us stuck. And so once I started to remove that and be like, no, I'm not a picky eater, right? Like maybe I was as a child, but maybe that was also my parents' fault for like just indulging me, right? I'm trying to think about that now as a
Totally.
parent as well. You know, don't just give in and be like, fine, just have the spaghetti. I'll make the spaghetti for you. Like, this is what we're eating. Try it or not. Or lowering the stakes. Not that don't put so much pressure. I remember all the pressure of like, oh, is Jessica gonna eat this vegetable? I couldn't deal with that. I still can't as an adult. So trying to lower that pressure, but think about the labels that we've given ourselves that keep us in this box and prevent us from actually changing and shifting. Your
Yeah.
identity will shift as you grow, and that's okay.
Yeah, and by the way, like, in the same way that, the labels can keep you stuck, like, also thinking about the labels that you want to step into, like, the things that can actually be empowering, and how can you reverse that? Even just sort of practicing for yourself, for me, my version of that was my mom had always said as I was a kid of like, "You're just big boned." It's like, well, that's not helpful, and, like, probably also not true.
Yeah, again, I've seen Teresa in 3D. None of these things are true.
The bones are normal
They're
bones.
normal size.
As it turns out. But like, it was interesting as for example, I also actually worked with a nutritionist, a coach, Adam Gilbert, who runs a company called My Body Tutor, who was spectacular. And what really got me going and why what he talked about was so impactful for me was it actually showed me how little actually of what I was struggling with was actually about the food. His big thing was like it's basically never about the food. It's all about what the food allows you to avoid. And I
Oh,
realized like
what do you
there were
mean
a
by
lot
that?
of times it was very interesting. And there were a lot of times like I realized I was whether it was looking for comfort or managing something that was stressful of just like all the ways I used food that were not
Emotionally.
about that were not about logical hunger,
Hmm.
just, like different feelings in my body. And then as I also started, it's actually one of the things I love about I'm a big long time Peloton member. I've had my bike now for 10 years, one of the
My
OGs. Used to
gosh.
go to the studio on 23rd Street. But
Yes, I know
like
you're a VIP there.
VIP early on, but they talk about also in that setting of like they call everybody athletes. And you are an athlete. You're showing up every day and there's something around the language that we use to talk about what we do and who we want to be that can be either very disempowering or very empowering.
Correct.
And thinking about kind of how you want to talk about who you are and what you do and the ways that you can step into that, I think is really helpful.
Yeah, and I think that's actually like a nice tool that people can use is think about what is the label that will empower you to reach whatever goal that you have. And so for me, my goal, I used to be an athlete. Now I just don't have that interest in that, but I do want to be healthy. And so I like what you said earlier about instead of saying exercise, use movement, because that's actually the shift that I made as well. Because I was like, I should give myself credit for when I go for a walk, right? And not be like, well, that
Totally.
doesn't count. Well, why shouldn't that count? Because if it counts, I think sometimes we're looking to discount, but what we don't realize is in terms of energy, there are things that we can do that will help us generate energy. And there's things that we do that will sap us from energy or make it harder for us to get going. And so when you can give yourself credit for something, when your goal is I want to have movement 4 times a week, and you can give yourself credit for going for a walk, it makes you the next day feel more empowered to try and get another day of movement versus being like, well, I didn't do it yesterday, so I must suck and giving yourself reason to not do it the next day. So give yourself credit, even if it's small. I'm big on celebrating small wins because it's the small wins that ladder up to the big ones. You want to run a 5K? That's why there's that whole walk to run a 5K program because they understand the power. Like, if you want to run 5K, let's start by walking, like for 10 minutes. Do not start trying to run 5 days a week. I always tell my clients, I have a lot of them who want to exercise or movement may be part of it. And I say, okay, your goal is to work out 1 time this week. And they're like, but I'm trying to, and I said, no, 1 time. And they want to push, they want to do more. And I go, if you do more, great. But I'm only holding you 1 time. Because once they get that under their belt, they'll be like, well, yeah, that was easy. I'm like, okay, now do 2 times. And then they get that in the belt. And then all of a sudden, they've built a habit of it. You can't build a
Totally.
habit when you get discouraged right away.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I would add two things. Is one is like the other way I love cutting that. Personally, I'm somebody who loves to create a routine and a structure. So for
Yes.
me, the 1 day a week was like almost funny of like I loved the approach instead of like, I'm going to do something for 5 minutes every day and just like start with 5 minutes and we'll start with five and then maybe it'll become 10 or whatever. But like this slow, gradual build that made it bite size and sustainable. And Adam in this program was often like, sometimes a win is just like, I put on my shoes. If I put on my shoes, I'm probably going to go outside and like whatever, run or walk
You
for
give a
five
mouse a
minutes.
cookie,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, like, we're there, and it's like, it's like the classic habit stacking, of
Mhm.
just how do you get a little bit of something going that helps get the train moving, that helps you get the momentum to actually take the action that you really wanna take. But the other lens I'd add to this too is oftentimes I feel like people again, it's the same theme as with diet culture as it is around exercise movement of like, which thing is best and should you be doing zone 2 cardio versus high intensity interval training? And it's like totally misses the point. We're talking about optimizing at 94% versus 92%. And for the vast majority of people, it just doesn't matter at all. Like, the
Yes.
key thing is, like, if you are moving your body every single day, doing something, to your earlier point too, Jess, that lights you up, that gives you energy, that is fun, that is a million times better than trying to do the perfect thing that you hate and are
And
struggling
then
to do.
quitting,
Yeah.
right? And starting over. Yeah.
And, like, there are I mean, the neat thing about it, and one of the joys is, like, there are so many different things you can try. It's like whether you want something that's community based or not, if there's rock climbing or rowing or a dance group or you do like spinning or walking and you've got a group of women or men that you, like, have a walking group with. There's so many different things you could do, and I think, like, certainly for me, what was helpful as I was starting on the journey was, like, I went to so many different boutique fitness classes. Like, ClassPass was such a thing at the time, and it was a really
Yes.
fun way to, like, sample and try a whole bunch of stuff. I
You
was
got to
going
find your tribe and your community and what works for you, what
Oh,
speaks to you. Because this is
totally.
what I love about us doing this podcast. We're friends for so long, but we're so different. Because I'm like, I hate cycling. Okay. I love,
Ugh,
I shouldn't say I hate Peloton because I worked with them. I love the company. I personally do not like being on a bike, a stationary bike, or even a moving bike. Don't like it. Okay. But for me, it was also finding what is the right class for me. And I stumbled
yeah.
upon P-Volve during the pandemic. And it was the first system that I could actually stick with. And part of that is like the biggest problem why I hate fitness classes is because I'm not in athlete condition. And when I would go to these fitness classes, I remember this one class I went to, it was like a dance, I thought it was one of those dance workout classes. Like, oh, this is gonna be fun. I swear to God, 10 minutes in, I don't know what the muscles are on the top of your thighs. Like,
Quads.
again, not an athlete. I swear, 10 minutes in, my quads were burning that I thought I was about to like snap a tendon. 10 minutes into the class, and we have 40 more minutes to go. Okay. So what would happen is I would go to these workout classes, not even classes, I would go to a workout class. I would be so sore for like a week, I couldn't even build momentum
Mhm.
or start to build a habit.
Yeah.
Right. And that was disempowering to me. So when I found P-Volve during the pandemic, their focus is on functional movement. And the first time I did one of their classes, I was like, did I even like work out? Like I didn't sweat and I don't feel anything. The next day I felt though lightly sore.
Ugh.
Okay. Lightly where I was like still able to do another thing 2 days later. And I was encouraged to because I was like, oh, I did it. I completed the class. I did a 20-minute workout.
Awesome.
That's movement, right? That's better than zero. And then that encouraged me to keep going. And I love them now. And now it's been so helpful to me. But sometimes finding the right thing for you can make all the difference because the goal at the end of the day is find something that you can and want to go back to,
Yeah.
whatever that is.
And it's so important. And like first of all, I totally, totally agree. I mean, I definitely found like when I started, I was absolutely not in good shape at all. And I definitely probably both looked and felt awkward, like uncoordinated, whatever, doing, especially by the way, like bar at the beginning, even
Yeah,
like
I can't do those
Pilates, I was
things.
learning. Yeah, some
Not
of that stuff
flexible.
is like, but, but it's what I found really helpful too was like, look, the first class, no matter what you do, if you're doing something like this, is probably always going to be a little funny. Like you're just not going to be comfortable. Like
You're not used to it.
yeah, how could you possibly be comfortable? And so there's a little bit the idea of like, sometimes you will actually just hate it. It's not your vibe. You don't like the instructor or the music or the things, and that's fine. Those like don't go back to. But if it was just that like you weren't quite in the groove, but there's something there, just challenge yourself to go a couple more times. Like that was the thing for me of like, I know the first time's gonna be weird. Like, let me just go 5 times. I'm gonna go 5 times over the next whatever, 3 weeks and, like, see if I like this. And it kinda it's sometimes actually surprising how fast you get up the comfort curve. And and also I feel like the thing that I was looking for was, like, where were the communities that I liked? Where were instructors who I really vibed with, who had awesome energy? Now, I love, 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 love Barry's boot camp. It's like a good mix of high intensity intervals on a treadmill plus weight training, and I love it. There's this instructor, Keone, who I just is a dream. I love his energy. It's always super, super motivating. He pushes everybody really hard, but like the energy in the room is always so good, and I love it. Like it's fun to go. It's
And
energizing.
that's what motivates you is like you can tell
Yes,
that what keeps you going back is you like the community aspect. And I'm like the opposite.
totally.
I'm like, I don't want to show up to a class. I don't want to be around anyone. Maybe because anytime I go with any sort of expectation of building community, like nobody acknowledges me. Maybe that's a New York City thing. I don't know. Like New Yorkers are a little guarded until you know us. But what I love about my Bebop is they're on-demand classes. I do them in this same space where I'm sitting right now. I push this chair out of the way and I do it here. I will do it at like 10 o'clock during the work week because I set my own schedule. Yay, working for yourself. Nice plug here. But I do it energy wise. We can talk about this in a second when it makes sense for me, time wise. And I can do it on my own schedule and I do with anyone else and I just do it and move on with my life. And
Totally.
that's the beauty of Zoom. Teresa wants community. She wants energy. I'm like, let me just, nobody look at me. I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to interact with anyone. I just want to do it and move on with my day. And that's great, right? Something
Yeah.
for everyone.
And it's the beautiful thing. There are like a million options. And mostly it's like wherever you gravitate, it's like there's something out there that probably will really resonate and be fun. And it's like I feel like there's just a little bit of patience required to find out exactly what your thing is that really lights you up and is fun. But the other thing that you said, Jess, I think is so important is like, for me, especially being in a job where I have to be there some reasonable
A
number of
certain time,
hours
yeah.
every day. Yeah, for me, I like initially tried to start working out in the evenings, especially even as a consultant in private equity. I mean, 94% of the time, whatever good intentions
Didn't
I
make
have
it.
got totally blown up by getting staffed on a deal late or whatever urgent client thing. And so I started realizing that like if I did not go first thing in the morning, it just
It
wasn't
wasn't
going
going
to
to happen.
happen. Yeah,
Yes.
and then obviously if I was working super super late, then I could decide to sleep in on any given day, but like it was actually then starting to get into a consistent rhythm of early morning slots that really worked for me. And then funnily enough, also like the cancellation fees on boutique fitness were a really powerful motivator to show up.
Sure. Yeah. They'll get you with those cancellation fees.
They
Yeah,
will get you for
absolutely.
the late cancels. But then it was like then I started to be able to over time like actually build a much more consistent practice.
And
Now
routine, I think, as well.
yeah, and so now it's like I mean, the great part about it and again, this took a really long time, but it's why I think there's real power in, like, getting to some type of daily habit, even if it's 5 minutes, is now I can't imagine missing a day. It's like and I have a day a week where I do something lighter. It's sort of I do Pilates, the private coach, and, like, I always find it very stretchy and
I love that's your
rejuvenating.
that's your version of lighter.
That's my off day. I love exercising.
Bless
It's
you.
so
Yeah. No, but that's great.
yeah.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, and again, it took a really long time to get here, but it's recognizing that like when it becomes a part of your day, a part of your life, even if it's very short, it's so much easier to build on top of and have that just be a way of life. And for me, that was what I really wanted to get to was like being able to say that I was somebody who consistently did this. And I mean, for me, just the differences again are just totally insane. I just feel so much more energized. It's fun. It's enlightening. And again, if a certain type of movement is not doing that, I would just say like keep looking until you find the thing that does, because that's how it's supposed to feel.
Yes. And I think you're talking also about timing is really important. I think there's two resources for anyone who wants to learn more about how to build better habits because the reason why when it becomes part of your routine, everything feels easier is because it is. Habits are encoded at our unconscious level. So we don't have to take active conscious energy to do it. And that's helpful because our conscious mind can process about 40 million bits of information a second. Our conscious mind can hold like 40. Okay, like no more zeros after that.
Literally 40.
They're literally 40. Like it's I think
Yeah.
less than that, but just for the sake of,
19, but it's
yeah,
really
I think it's some it is less, but just for the sake of people understanding like the ratios, we'll simplify it that way. So building habits eventually moves something that takes a lot of conscious effort to a place where it doesn't take any conscious effort and thought. It becomes automatic. And that's the goal of doing this is getting something, put in the effort up front, and then that effort will go away eventually once you have that habit. And if you want to learn more about habits, two great books that I love is The Power of Habits by Charles Duhigg, I believe, and then Atomic Habits, which I
James
can't
Clear.
remember. Yeah, there we go.
James Clear.
James Clear. Yes.
Yeah,
Those are the
very
two
highly
go-to. Yes. Those are the two go-to books for that. We'll put that in the show notes as well. But I want to go back to your idea around timing because this isn't something people talk about a lot when they talk about energy. And so this was really enlightening to me. And there's actually a book called The Power of When. It might even be, it's like in the camp of like either it was Charles Duhigg or like one of the contemporaries in that space. But I'll put that in the show notes as well. I'll find it for us. So The Power of When really talks about there are good and bad times actually to do things. But more importantly, we each have a circadian rhythm. Most of us, like 99% of us, have a 24-hour circadian rhythm. There are people who do not have a 24-hour circadian rhythm. I met one of those individuals. Things just changed from there. But for the majority of us, our energy shifts over a 24-hour period, which means it's consistent every day in terms of how it shifts. Pay attention to when you feel the most energized, to when things are really easy for you, and pay attention to when you're dragging every day, because it probably happens around the same type of day. And maybe it's because we didn't eat a good lunch, to Teresa's point about like eating that actually good food. Maybe it's because of our sleep. If we have young children, we're not getting great sleep. And so maybe it takes us a little bit longer to reach that peak energy period than it did before babies. But whatever it is, just accept that that is your natural energy cycle. And try and match activities that require a lot of time and attention to your peak energy period. So one of the things that I also noticed was if I tried to work out after work, it didn't happen, or it was harder because it was weighing on me all day.
Totally.
That like, I have to, make time to do this. And so there's that burden all day on me. And then there's a lot that can go happen at the end of the day where all of a sudden I don't have the energy to do it. And that's not a cop out. That's literally how the energy cycle goes, which is why we fall asleep at night, because our energy starts to wind down. For most of us, unless you're a night owl, in which case that might be a good time for you. So for me, I found when I worked out before the baby, I was working out at like, I would wake up, have my matcha, sit and read the news for like 30 minutes, and then work out, and then come back and make breakfast. While my partner was like showering or just getting up, I would wake up a little before him. Now with the baby, there's no time for me unless I want to wake up super early, which I do not. I applaud those who are like, I wake up at 5 a.m. and I work out at 5:30. That's fantastic. I don't like to wake up before the sun comes up. So I'm just now.
I'm a 5:30.
I wasn't going to name names, but I had a feeling that was you. Yes. Teresa's the wake up at 5. That's great.
It.
If you're more like me and you're like, that's not happening, because I work from home, and this is something that even my clients who work from home have trouble like embodying and understanding. Doesn't matter when you do anything, right? All the time is the same. We all have 24 hours. When you decide to do your work versus not doesn't really matter. And so I now get up, get the baby going, get her out of the house with my husband. Then I sit down, do my emails, set my schedule for the day, knock off one or two few things to do. And then when I'm like ready to switch tasks before I go into like a deep work period, that's when I work out. I'll work out for like 20 minutes, then I'll go shower, and then I'm ready to sit down and focus on something that requires a big amount of attention. And when I started doing that, I swear I can get like 80 to 90% of all my work done before lunch. And it's so easy. If I try and do any of that work in the afternoon, it feels like I'm trying to like bike uphill without gears.
Yeah, I totally
difference.
get that. Yeah, I have all my energy in the morning too. Do you actually consciously block out time? Like, do you allocate time in your calendar to protect the workout?
I only schedule calls with clients or anyone in the afternoons, because if I do not have a call in the afternoon and I'm just expected to do work, it's very difficult. Like I sort of get the energy dips and I get bored. But if I'm on a call with someone, especially one-on-one, being on calls with clients is energy creating for me. It's energy generating for me. So all of a sudden I don't get that massive dip in energy. It's almost like instead I took like a Red Bull and then I'm like real crazed and people think there's something wrong with me afterwards. But I'm just like hopped up on the energy that coming from interacting with another human, I guess. And so that's how I book my schedule. So I don't have to, you can do more specific time blocking. If I was in corporate, even if I was working from home, I would then put a block on my calendar from 10 to 11 so that I can work out and shower during that time. And it might mean that I log on at like 8:30 and start working from there because I'm going to take that hour later. But you can do that.
Yeah, and it's so funny here. I have totally the same energy patterns of like me up until like 12 or 1 is like my most productive. Like everything's on, the cylinders are firing, and mine is lowest for the day, definitely that afternoon. So I do the same thing. I like always try to orient meetings in the afternoon because those I find exactly as you said so energizing. But my husband, for example, is like the exact opposite. Like for him, like mornings are so painful. For me, I like jump out of bed, put on my clothes, I'm working out
Yeah,
15
yeah.
minutes.
Once I'm up and I'm firing
Right.
on all cylinders. But I actually want to
Yeah.
go deeper in this because I know a lot of people maybe not- don't have the luxury of me working for themselves. They actually have people who watch over them. They have to report to. So how do you get to a place where you're able to push? Some people don't understand, like, how do I push my meetings to the afternoon so that I have flexibility in the morning to get my priorities done and not Susan's priorities?
Yeah, well, so I mean, I will be very forthright in admitting this has gotten way easier as I've gotten more senior. Obviously, my ability to like protect this when I was earlier in my career was harder. I mean, now I've been very grateful to have it like an EA who I work with, an administrative support, who I can actually say like, let's keep these times focused for meetings and these times focused for me to do the work that I need to do. Before that, what I was also doing though was I would actually put in like focus time blocks in my calendar so people wouldn't even see them as available. And mostly honestly, like people don't really know. Like, I mean, obviously, sometimes
Assume you're in another meeting
yeah, yeah,
because
it's
that's
fine.
what we do all day. We just sit in meetings. That's what work has become.
A little bit,
Especially as you get more
but
senior.
yeah, but I found even just by, like, literally blocking out the time obviously, sometimes I'd get pulled into something and, like, be one of the more junior people in the meeting. There was nothing to be done, that was when it was gonna happen. But even if you could protect it 50% of the time, 70% of the time, that's a huge win. And, like, the big thing that I found and what was a really significant game changer for me was like, I'm actually fine going back to back to back to back meetings unless I have to like really present something or something is like kind of a
Or pee.
major. Yeah, also that. I do love the like 25-minute meeting or the 55-minute meeting. I don't do that all
Correct.
the time, but like it's nice to sort of block out the space. But actually having, I found the context switching to be very disruptive. Like, there is
Yes.
nothing that makes me less productive than, like, a 30-minute meeting and then a 30-minute break and then a 30-minute meeting and a 30-minute break. I do nothing, like, nothing of any importance gets done in those times. So even just trying to sort of cluster when I had time to do work and make sure that was like ideally an hour and a half, but even an hour was really helpful. And then and sort of blocks where I was like in more sort of back to back type of meetings was really helpful. I found that made a big difference.
And that goes to like knowing your energy, right? You knowing that about yourself and being self aware about that. Whereas the types of meetings that I do where I'm actually in coaching sessions are very taxing for me. And so I have a
That's
rule
super
that I don't do more than 2 meetings in a row. And then I would rather have that 30-minute break, which is actually my schedule today. I had a client call, then I had a sales call, then I had 30 minutes, and then I had where we jumped on this to record. But I use also that 30 minutes. Sometimes I honestly just need to get up and my
take a
head just
breath.
needs a few minutes to empty. I just need a few minutes to empty and to come back down. And so it's not wasted time, it's reset time. And I think they talk about this. Do they talk about this in Atomic Habits? If it's not there, maybe there's another resource, but talking about you want to have a series of breaks in your day. You can also look at the Pomodoro effect, the
Yep.
Pomodoro technique.
Method.
So it's focus for like 25 minutes, then take a 5-minute break, then another 25 minutes, then a 5-minute break. And then eventually you'll want to take like a half an hour break, a longer break. But for me, that's helpful for me is to think about I need like a mini break after sessions that require that are very taxing for me. And then I also sometimes need time to do wrap up. So I send client recap emails after those. I like to do them closer to that session in that 30 minutes before I get to the next one, and then I'll prep for that one. So it's figuring out what works for you. Would you rather power through and do the back to backs because you're not doing anything those 30 minutes and it's better to just like chunk all your 30 minutes into 1 hour and a half blocks so you can get something done later? Or do you need that time so that you can then show up into the next meeting and you will actually get things done? The point here is there's multiple ways to do it,
And
but it
no
has
right
to start with
answer.
the right answer is whatever works with your energy. So learn what your energy is and what makes sense for you and work with your energy. When you work with your energy, work actually feels 1,000 times easier than trying to work against it. It's literally the difference between riding an e-bike up a hill and riding a bike with no gears up a hill. You decide which one you want.
Yeah, I think that's totally spot on. And like and by the way, it may also evolve. Like for me, a big part of the reason why I'm like really focused at this point on keeping the meeting stacked is to be very efficient with how my time and energy is focused. And now it's so much more oversight and pushing work forward and less like me needing to sort of
Executing.
yeah, and that has had a really big shift too in how I manage my schedule. So it's like I would definitely view this as even just getting in dialogue with yourself of like, how did this make me feel? How do I feel coming out of this set of meetings? Do I feel energized, drained? Where do I feel most alive? Where do I have the best ability to focus? And if you're not sure, try some stuff. Like try some
Mhm.
stuff, take some notes, and like kind of keep tweaking and refining till you find something that really works for you. But it makes a huge difference when you like kind of settle into something that really works well.
Yeah. And I feel like there's so much more that we can tap on this topic of energy. So I think we'll definitely come back and talk about some other aspects of it. But I think one of the key through lines to our conversation today is you have to learn to listen to yourself and your body. Each of us is unique. Each of us needs different things. That's why Teresa and I are great co-hosts because we are so different. We both ended up in a place that we think am managing. I end my days with energy most days. We both consider ourselves successful. We moved up the career ladder, but we've approached it differently. So figure out what works for you. And I do want to sort of wrap things up and end with this quote that I really, really like that I think summarizes some of the things that we're talking about. It's a quote that I use when I do one of my burnout workshops, because I think that's a big part of what a lot of us face is that we're feeling burned out, we're running on fumes. And this quote is from Naveed Ahmed, who's the founder of a company called Flourish. And she says, sometimes life taps you on the shoulder with a feather, sometimes it hits you with a brick, and sometimes it runs you over with a bus. Learn to listen when it's just a feather. And that's really what we've been talking about today.
It's an awesome quote. Yeah. And we'll definitely come back. I think there's a whole lot we've just barely scratched the surface on. And we got to talk about sleep and mindsets. We'll do an episode 2 on this topic. But otherwise, appreciate everyone listening in and we'll see you again soon.